Of May. Good afternoon. I've today left hospital after a week in which the NHS has saved my life, no question. It's hard to find words to express my debt, but before I come to that, I want to thank everyone in the entire UK for the effort and the sacrifice you have made and are making. When the sun is out and the kids are at home, when the whole natural world seems at its loveliest and the outdoors is so inviting, I can only imagine how tough it has been to follow the rules on social distancing. I thank you because so many millions and millions of people across this country have been doing the right thing. Millions going through the hardship of self-isolation, faithfully, patiently, and with thought and care for others as well as for themselves. I want you to know that this Easter Sunday, I do believe that your efforts are worth it and are daily proving their worth. Because although we mourn every day those who are taken from us in such numbers, and though the struggle is by no means over, we are now making progress in this incredible national battle against coronavirus. A fight we never picked against an enemy we still don't entirely understand. We're making progress in this national battle because the British public formed a human shield around this country's greatest national asset, our National Health Service. We understood and we decided that if together we could keep our NHS safe, if we could stop our NHS from being overwhelmed, then we could not be beaten, and this country would rise together and overcome this challenge as we have overcome so many challenges in the past. In the last 7 days, I have, of course, seen the pressure that the NHS is under. I've seen the personal courage, not just of the doctors and nurses, but of everyone, the cleaners, the cooks, the healthcare workers of every description, physios, radiographers, pharmacists, who've kept coming to work, kept putting themselves in harm's way, kept risking this deadly virus. It is thanks to that courage, that devotion, that duty, and that love that our NHS has been unbeatable. I want to pay my own thanks to the utterly brilliant doctors, leaders in their fields, men and women, but several of them for some reason called Nick, who took some crucial decisions a few days ago, for which I will be grateful for the rest of my life. I want to thank the many nurses, men and women, whose care has been so astonishing. I'm going to forget some names, so please forgive me, but I want to thank Poling and Shannon and Emily and Angel and Connie and Becky and Rachel and Nikki and Anne. And I hope they won't mind if I mention in particular two nurses who stood by my bedside for 48 hours when things could have gone either way. They're Jenny from New Zealand, in Invercargill on the South Island to be exact, and Luis from Portugal, near Porto. And the reason in the end my body did start to get enough oxygen was because for every second of the night, they were watching and they were thinking and they were caring and making the interventions I needed. So that is how I also know that across this country, 24 hours a day, for every second of every hour, there are hundreds of thousands of NHS staff who are acting with the same care and thought and precision as Jenny and Luis. That is why we will defeat this coronavirus and defeat it together. We will win because our NHS is the beating heart of this country. It is the best of this country. It is unconquerable. It is powered by love. So, thank you from me, from all of us, to the NHS. And let's remember to follow the rules on social distancing, stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Thank you, and happy Easter.
Singapore reported 233 new coronavirus cases on Sunday and 7 new clusters, said the Ministry of Health in its daily update. While the number of cases in the community has increased following a wave of imported cases, there has been some moderation in recent days, in the light of the safe distancing measures that have been put in place, the ministry added. The number of imported cases rose in the middle of last month due to a large number of returnees, but has since come down to zero, it said. Among the new cases, 51 are linked to known clusters, 15 are linked to other cases, and 167 are pending new contact tracing. None are imported cases. Of the 167 pending contact tracing, 141 are work permit holders who are mostly residing in dormitories, work sites, and other living quarters. This brings the total number of cases to 2,532. The new clusters are Acacia Lodge, Tuas View Dormitory, 36 Woodlands Industrial Park E1, Kalang Dormitory, the Black Tap Burger Joint at Marina Bay Sands, a construction site at 9 Penang Road, and McDonald's outlets at Forum Galleria, Lido, and Parkland. 5 employees of McDonald's who worked at Lido, Forum Galleria, Parkland, and Gilang East Central outlets were diagnosed with COVID-19, said the fast food chain earlier on Sunday. They have since been quarantined in medical facilities, and all other employees who have worked at the affected branches have been told to isolate themselves with a 14-day leave of absence. The 4 restaurants have been cleaned and are closed for business until further notice. Clusters at foreign worker dormitories continue to grow. For instance, 30 more cases were linked to S11 dormitory at Punggol, which now has 365 cases. Another 32 patients have also been discharged from hospitals or community isolation facilities, bringing the total who have fully recovered to 560. It's not an uncommon ritual right now. You are on your couch in pajamas, something you haven't changed out of all day. Who can blame you? Now is the time for comfort, no matter what the productivity gurus say. You've cooked a few meals for yourself this week, maybe even made a pot of beans or baked a loaf of sourdough, but doing all those dishes can get tiring. So can feeding yourself multiple meals a day, every day. So you grab your smartphone and open an app like Grubhub, Postmates, Uber Eats, or DoorDash, browsing the options of restaurants that have made the decision to pivot to delivery. But instead of picking pizza or tacos, you need to do something else. Delete the apps entirely. But what about supporting my favorite local restaurant, you say? Well, you can still do that by calling the restaurant directly to place your order, or by buying merchandise and gift cards, or by donating to a restaurant staff's Venmo or GoFundMe, or a fund to feed frontline workers, or by calling your representative. If the restaurant is only selling via delivery apps, Caviar seems to be the fairest option. For too long, these apps, middleman tech companies with millions, if not billions in funding, have long frustrated the restaurant industry. Their predatory practices include typically taking a 20 to 30% commission from restaurants on each order, asking restaurants to pay for promotions the app is offering to customers, and adding restaurants to the app without the restaurant's consent. Not to mention the several $100s these companies charge restaurants to even sign up to use their platforms. This behavior has only gotten more egregious as the COVID-19 pandemic has upended the entire restaurant industry, leaving millions of restaurant employees out of work and chefs and owners scrambling desperately to find any way to save their restaurants in an industry with already razor-thin margins. For weeks, as restaurants begged the delivery apps to reduce their commissions, the apps refused, and instead embarking on misleading PR campaigns positioning themselves as friends and saviors of the restaurant industry. Grubhub made an initial splash in March by announcing that it was deferring commission payments of up to $100 million. But deferring only means collecting the money at a later date, not a reduction in commissions. Postmates reached out to celebrities to shout out their favorite local restaurants in an ad campaign. Caviar dropped its delivery fee for customers, and Grubhub announced a promotion offering $10 off any $30 orders placed between 5 and 9 p.m. What the promotion failed to explain was that Grubhub forced the restaurants to pick up the tab on the promotion. And if that wasn't enough, Grubhub also took its commission based on the total cost of the order before the discount. The apps do all this while severely underpaying its delivery drivers. This was already an issue pre-pandemic. The average pay is about $10 to $15 per hour. Now they have one of the most dangerous jobs, and while some companies like Caviar also providing with hand sanitizer and gloves, none have offered their drivers pay raises or health care. It might be easier to be sympathetic with these apps if they were, like the businesses they depend upon, losing money. But they are not. Instead, they are profiting during this crisis. As people stay at home, delivery has become more popular than ever before. An Uber Eats spokesperson told Fox News that delivery orders in the US and Canada have increased by 30% since mid-March. And as shelter-in-place orders continue to extend, that number will likely only rise. If these apps actually cared about the restaurants upon which their businesses are built, they would agree to commission caps at 10% or less. Talk restaurateur Nick Kokanis' reservation and pickup platform offers a standard 3% commission contract. Instead, according to a report from Eater, the tech companies have no plans to reduce their commissions and are fighting any efforts requiring them to do so. Today, shortly after the San Francisco passed an emergency order requiring delivery apps to cap their commissions at 15%, Grubhub sent an email to its San Francisco-based customers, pleading with them to oppose the order. It should be noted that earlier this week, DoorDash announced that it would reduce all commission fees for restaurants with 5 or less locations by 50% between April 13 and the end of May. While it is progress, it might be too little too late, nor does it offer a permanent solution to these predatory practices. The COVID-19 pandemic has completely capsized the restaurant industry as we have known it. The industry that currently exists is a shell of what was just a month ago. As restaurants debate the moral dilemmas of keeping their staff safe versus the financial dilemma of closing, as restaurants reckon with the fact that much of the industry was broken before the crisis, as restaurants figure out how to operate in a world full of unknowns, delivery apps should not be allowed to continue the same vulturous practices they deployed in a pre-coronavirus world. Until these apps actively start agreeing to commission caps, it's time to delete your delivery apps and let them burn. Kentucky State Police were circling the parking lot of a church that's packed for Easter service, defying state orders and issuing warnings, if not citations. Maryville Baptist Church in Hillview, Kentucky, drew what seemed to be nearly a full house Sunday morning. A reporter, Sarah Ladd, with Louisville Courier-Journal, captured images in the parking lot where you could hear the pastor leading the congregation in song. Shortly before the service began, volunteers were clearing the parking lot of nails, apparently left there by someone who wanted to discourage the service, which is violating Kentucky's safer at-home order. Gathering of more than 10 people are illegal. Sarah Ladd on Twitter said, "I'm at Maryville Baptist Church, which continues to hold in-person services despite orders to cease. This morning, piles of nails have been scattered at every entrance." So far, the cops aren't shutting down the service or arresting churchgoers. Instead, they're leaving notifications on the cars in the lot, informing the owners they are potentially spreading COVID-19. The notifications also say the health department will contact the car owner and his or her family members and require them to quarantine for 14 days. Unclear if they're issuing tickets, but the notice does warn the churchgoers they may be committing a misdemeanor by violating the state's emergency order. Roman authorities are investigating controversial religious leader Jesus of Nazareth for violating the empire's clear stay-in-tomb order. After crucifying him and laying him in the tomb, Roman guards put him under strict orders to stay there and not come back, rising victorious over sin and death. But Jesus, answering to a higher authority, refused to stay dead and busted out of the tomb, establishing a kingdom that would never end, again in clear violation of the government's orders. Jesus is a dangerous rebel, refusing to bend the knee to Caesar and not abiding by the law of sin and death, said one Roman official. He clearly broke the law by leaving the tomb, and we're going to be issuing a citation and placing him under mandatory quarantine for these crimes. After coming into contact with many large groups over the course of approximately 40 days, Jesus ascended into heaven and is currently thought to be reigning on high. Authorities are also investigating him for planning to gather with a large multitude of every tribe, tongue, and nation. He says he currently has no plans to obey any earthly king on the matter, pressing ahead with the gathering of those who believe he died and rose again and trust him alone for their salvation. Now, just before I end this video, I just want to tell you that a lot of people regarding that Joe Biden with the hole in his mask thing were taking it a little too seriously. It's called sarcasm. And if you don't know what sarcasm is, well, this video is also included with that sarcasm. So I suggest if you are offended with this kind of video, look up the word sarcasm. It's all good. The Great Flout Doors. Britons head to the parks and beaches to soak up 73-degree Fahrenheit heat despite lockdown, while councils are forced to shut cemeteries to clamp down on Easter mourners laying flowers. Sunbathers were seen brazenly lying in London parks as people head to Britain's beaches and green spots. Easter Sunday saw more sunbathers and walkers flout lockdown rules with temperature in the mid-20s. Councils are closing cemeteries to stop families gathering in large groups to lay flowers and pay respects. Sunbathers spotted in Greenwich, Lambeth, and Battersea parks as weekend of warm weather continues. Coast Guard found scuba diver fishing at Brighton Pier on Saturday night after people visited parks and cliffs. All across the nation, continuing to flout social distancing guidelines as the country tries to control the surge in coronavirus cases, which has now hit 84,279. With temperatures soaring to 73 Fahrenheit in parts of the UK today, sun-soaked parks and beaches were once again filling up with people flouting lockdown rules by sunbathing, as councils were forced to shut cemeteries to stop Easter mourners gathering to lay flowers. Today's shocking pictures revealed sunbathers lounging in London's Victoria Park, which only reopened its gates yesterday after being closed for 2 weeks to deter those breaching the government's social distancing measures, sunbathing in Battersea Park and gathering at Beachy Head and East Sussex. Meanwhile, in Torquay, a family were caught by police and fined for driving nearly 200 miles to go fishing, despite restrictions in place due to coronavirus, Devon and Cornwall police confirmed. As the nation continues to grapple with the rising death toll, which has now hit 10,612, today cyclists were seen embarking on rides of up to 200 miles organized by social fitness app Strava, which tracks cycling and running exercises. In other acts of continuing defiance, one on a dirt bike was filmed goading a cycling policeman chasing him in Huddersfield, West Yorkshire, on Friday afternoon while the Coast Guard at Brighton Pier found a scuba diver fishing. The scenes come after police officers were forced to stage an intervention after a huge house party overflowing with lockdown rebels sprung up at a property in Stockton, Durham. Around 24 officers were required to attend, along with 4 paramedics, as the illegal gathering spiraled out of control. Despite politicians and nurses repeatedly pleading with the country to stay indoors and protect the NHS, the spring heat wave has seen a small group of people, now being referred to online as #COVIDiots, continue to ignore advice. We should see a spike in about 2 to 3 weeks' time, with more of these guys being done for. No surprise. Retailers are frequently running out of everything from flour and fresh meat to toilet paper and pharmaceuticals as supply chains hammered by the coronavirus struggle to keep up with stockpiling consumers. Retailers are frequently running out of everything from flour and fresh meat to toilet paper. Although out-of-stock products are usually replenished within a day or two, the sight of bare shelves typically prompts more hoarding as people fear the supply of the goods they need may be cut off. This vicious cycle is a direct result of shortcomings of modern supply chains, which most companies, regardless of industry, now use. I believe three main characteristics of today's supply chains are largely to blame. First, supply chains have become very complex. Fundamentally, a supply chain links a series of companies that make, transport, refine, and deliver the finished product you buy at a retailer, restaurant, or anywhere else. Consider a cup of coffee from Starbucks. Your coffee might begin as a pile of coffee beans grown and picked by a farmer in Guatemala. They're then shipped to a coffee roaster, say in Seattle, who then sends them out to a distributor near where you live, who sells them to your local Starbucks. A shutdown anywhere along the supply chain in any of these locations stops this flow and could prevent you from enjoying your morning brew. While a coffee supply chain may be relatively simple and linear, it can quickly get complicated for products that may have many parts, such as an Apple iPhone. Apple actually has suppliers in 43 countries, and tracing the journey of any one component is difficult. For example, one of the chips that run an iPhone is designed in California, but made in Taiwan, tested in the Philippines, and then added to Apple products in China. And many companies often share the same supplier, such as Intel for processors or Kimberly-Clark for the fiber and toilet paper. So a hiccup in one link is the supply chain can have ripple effects across companies around the world. The result is that the vast majority of global companies don't fully grasp their risk exposure. Few, if any, have complete knowledge of the locations of all the companies that provide parts to their direct suppliers. Even supply chains for foods like bananas are long and complex, as most produce comes from countries across the globe. Compounding the complexity is the problem of capacity, which is how much of something each company's supply chain can produce. Rapidly increasing capacity is hard. Just think about the difference in hosting a dinner party for 2 guests versus 200. That is exactly why there's a shortage of hand sanitizer. Customers are buying huge amounts, but suppliers are not able to increase available amounts of essential ingredients such as alcohol, glycerol, and hydrogen peroxide. A lean machine. What has made these supply chains even more vulnerable are strategies that rely heavily on just-in-time or lean inventory replenishment. That is, companies maintain only enough stock on hand for a short duration and rely on small deliveries made frequently to keep costs low. For example, many companies keep just enough inventory to last a few weeks, confident that products will arrive as they are needed. That system works perfectly well, provided there are no disruptions. However, as companies in a wide variety of industries, including food, retail, high-tech, and automotive, have increasingly implemented this kind of strategy, they no longer have the extra inventory or excess capacity to make up for production losses caused by a disruption. As a result, these businesses are highly vulnerable to even a short material flow problem. When an earthquake shook Taiwan on September 21, 1999, it created a huge disruption for the computer chip industry, delaying shipping times for some products by more than a week. Similarly, since lean systems are removed most excess inventory, many medical supply chains were not able to respond to disruptions during the emergence of the avian influenza or bird flu in 2005. Yet those with relatively minor regional disruptions. The coronavirus pandemic has virtually shut down dozens of economies, with movements of over a third of the global population restricted. This means a surge in demand for any product could easily result in shortages for days or weeks. Having a lean inventory is a strategy with many benefits and is designed to eliminate waste and cut costs. However, many companies may have taken it too far. In an era of global connectivity, a disruption anywhere can trickle down the entire supply chain. Moving manufacturing offshore. Further exacerbating the problem is the strategy of offshoring, in which companies manufacture their products overseas in countries like China, Vietnam, and Malaysia in an effort to cut costs. On the plus side, this has allowed many companies to reduce the number of links in their supply chains, or at least shrink the distance between them, by relying primarily on a smaller number of sources that are concentrated in a specific geographic area. But in this quest to lower operating costs, including labor and overhead. More companies have put too many of their eggs in one basket. Certain industries have favored certain regions, with the auto, tech, and agricultural industries favoring China. India, on the other hand, has become the primary source for generic drugs. As a result, disruptions in a single country become even more severe. In January, well before the US and countries in Europe had coronavirus outbreaks on their own, Western companies and retailers were already bracing for severe supply chain problems after China's economy went into lockdown. And the impacts are still being felt several months later on all kinds of products, from toys and TV screens to sponges and ink cartridges, and could even extend into Christmas. Of course, it makes sense that companies would do all they can to reduce costs and make their supply chains as efficient as possible. That has made them incredibly vulnerable to disruptions, even minor ones. And the coronavirus pandemic is a disruption like no other. And undoubtedly, people will continue to see temporary and longer shortages of essential goods as long as it lasts. My biggest concern is that if COVID-19 continues to spread throughout the US, devastating the ranks of large meatpacking plants and other factories and farms, Americans will begin to experience severe scarcity of foods and other goods. While it's probably too late to do much about the current crisis, I hope companies learn these lessons and adopt better strategies to manage their supply chain risks, such as by putting in place more backup suppliers and building up more inventory. Maybe then more of them will be ready for the next disruption. We can all hope. If there's anything that's guaranteed to make you smile today, it's not a zebra or a donkey. It's a zonkey. The adorable little creature was discovered at the Chiulu Hills National Park in Kenya, alongside one of the park's zebras. When caregivers from animal rescue and rehabilitation organization the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust Fund the little foal, they noticed she had stripes, but they were rather faint and only covered about half her body. After getting a closer look, they realized the gorgeous little foal wasn't a zebra at all. She was a zonkey, the offspring of a zebra and donkey. In a press release on Wednesday, April 8th, the group said, "Working with wildlife, one learns to expect the unexpected. Even the most seemingly straightforward story can eventually reveal its true stripes and end up surprising us all." Mummy Zebra, who is yet to be named, was a stray who had made her way out of Kenya's Tsavo East National Park and into a community of a local cattle herd, where she is said to have made herself at home. The Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, which normally cares for baby elephants, rhinos, and occasionally orphaned zebras, took Mama to Chiulu National Park. Zebra pregnancies last for a full 12 months, so it was easy for staff at the rescue center to work out what had happened, given that she had spent a lot of time living with the cattle herd in the last year. Mama Zebra had obviously become acquainted with an amorous donkey, according to the statement. The Wildlife Trust explained, "The zonkey combines the sturdy body of its donkey sire and the striped legs of its zebra mother, which makes for a striking creature. While it should otherwise lead a normal life, zonkies are mules, meaning that it will be unable to successfully breed once it reaches maturity." Fortunately, Mama Zebra and baby Zonkey are thriving and living their best life at the Chiulu National Park, which doesn't have many predators and has plenty of food and water to keep them satisfied and happy. Zonkies are in fact incredibly rare because the likelihood of a zebra and a donkey mating is uncommon, as they don't have the same number of chromosomes. That's what makes this little Zonkey foal so special.